my first reaction back after 2 weeks off from filming. And I understand that there's some people upset about the new mount from Final Fantasy XIV. And so I'm just trying to catch back up with the news. And this seems like as good a place to start as any.
And I find it kind of funny, okay? I really do. I find it kind of funny, and I find it kind of sad that there are people now in the Final Fantasy community because a new mount was added to the Final Fantasy store, and a lot of people were not happy about this. They were mad. Very, very mad. And it was a mad Final Fantasy world. Let me go over here and see if I can find it, okay?
So my understanding is that this is another example, my general understanding coming back from just loosely watching headlines and having talked to Brian briefly and all of that, and having sat in some streams, is that this is something that comes out of expectations meeting reality. So this is very much like people data mined or knew a new mount is coming, and so when they found out a new mount is coming, they set expectations around what it should cost, what it should be, how it should be made available. And so then when it comes in and it becomes a Mog Station mount that is a multi-seater, well, if you'd started with Mog Station multi-seater as the first piece of information you got, then we all know, any of us who have been around a long time, that it's going to be a $30 mount. We know that. Any of us who have been around a long time know that $30 is a high enough price that they can make some money off of it. It's a high enough price that they can afford to offer sales on it, which they do. And yet it's a low enough price that for people that feel that $15 a month is not very much money, because in their financial situation, $15 doesn't really add up. In trade for kind of 2 months subscription, they can pick up a really cool mount. I think at that point, it starts to become a question of, does it matter if the mount is a boss in game? Does it matter if the mob, it's just a reskin? Does it matter if it's something goofy? Like, it starts to become a question of, like, what mounts are okay to make paid mounts and not.
Okay. And the thing, what's funny to me about this is it's one of those cases where all of these people that are these, like, huge Final Fantasy fans, etc., it's finally your opportunity to be like, see, how's it feel now? Yeah, how's it feel now, huh? Yeah, you don't like it, do you? That's what we've been having to deal with for years. And so anyway, whales would buy anything? Oh yeah, sure, it's the same thing with WoW. I mean, the thing is with WoW is that you have these people, right? And you know what they are. And these are the individuals. They're not like Rich, because Rich can afford it, okay? So it's fine. But these are the individuals that work a customer support job at the AT&T call center, and they make $16 an hour, or they make, probably more realistically, I did an application there, they make probably $12 an hour, okay? And these are the same people that do this. And whenever they come home, and they have, you know, every single what are those things called? Funko Pops. They have an entire wall of Funko Pops. Their favorite animal in Star Wars is those little porg things, and they have, it's, you know, 5 different plushies of them as well that they have on their bed with their girlfriend or boyfriend that does the exact same shit that they do. And the moment that any sort of commercial enterprise gives them the opportunity to spend more of their hard-earned money, their eyes pop out of their fucking head.
So my question then is, let's assume that this is the literal, like, this anecdotal person he's made up is the example of everything that is with monetization, right? That all monetization is inherently predatory, and is inherently manipulative. And, like, I am not at all saying that some of it's not, but I am saying that at that point, he's saying, okay, this person has already spent on Star Wars, and they've already spent on these toys and all of this. Is it Square Enix's job to protect that person, and therefore cannot have anything for, in his anecdotal example, the riches of the world that can afford it, right? The people who say, I really like this game, I would love to support it more, and I need a way to do that. I just need a way to do that. Give me something to do that. There's a reason that charity galas exist as opposed to just donating to charities. People do want to have least something coming back just mentally for the fact that they're giving it away, but they're aware that they're not getting a good deal per se, right? That they're paying too much per plate to be at this charity gala because they're like, oh, it's going to a good cause. And it's that same kind of concept. I like Square Enix. I like what they're doing with my money right now. I'd like to give them more money if they would just give me a reason to do so. This is one of my bigger complaints about Guild Wars 2 is that they actually only monetize a couple of ways. And so if none of those ways suit you, then you end up in a position where you either have to engage in a system you don't like, or you have to feel like you want to support a game and you don't see an easy way to do it. And so Square Enix saying, hey, there's many ways. There's gacha style games that you can put on your phone if you want. There's mounts you can buy in the store. There's additional services that you can buy for your account. There's, like ways to increase your subscription. There's events you can support. The Lunar Whale was intentionally released as the most expensive mount to date because they literally put it in and said, hey, we're not selling FanFest tickets this year because it's all digital, and digital FanFests have been free before and they're going to remain free. And so if you'd like to support FanFest, this is a way to do so. And so they released the largest number of players can be seated on a mount ever to help justify the fact that it was the most expensive mount ever. And it was a way for people to say, hey, I want to support FanFest. I like that you do FanFests. Here's a way I can do that. So like, I would counterpoint by just saying like, who should we be protecting? Should we be protecting somebody who, in his example, has no self-control to manage their resources and does not have the resources to afford a lack of self-control? Or should we be saying, okay, now nobody, in order to protect this person that clearly does need it in his example, should we be not allowing anybody to have anything? And so like, paid mounts are just a really tricky tightrope. I don't know the answer, and like, thank God I'm not the person who has to make these decisions on like when you add a paid mount and when you don't, because I think there is a financial side of it where the subscriptions have not been increased and the cost of games has increased and the number of players has not increased to that point. And so what they can do in games now, thanks to this money, like the MOG station has paid for us to get an EU data center and soon an Oceanic data center. Like the amount of money made off these, I think people are underestimating how much somebody who like whales out on a game can spend. A subscription at $15 a month, you're talking, and then you buy maybe a collector's edition here and there or something like that. You're talking about somebody that's spending single digit hundreds on a game in a year. Somebody who buys all these mounts and plushies and jackets and $80 coffee mugs and all this stuff that Square Enix does and has the guitar and all that, like it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Like they're a pug that's 5 seconds from a heart attack. And these people go fucking ballistic. They love it. And they're like, and you see them in the comments. They're like, consume. Yes, they're consuming. And you'll see them and they're like, I don't really have the money for this, but hopefully Uncle Joe's gonna send me another stimmy. I'm gonna buy it anyway. I have to do it. I have to buy it. And you see them and like their characters are their profile pictures and everything like that. That's what they do. And I've seen so many people like this. I really have. And it's really sad to see, to be honest. But that's the target audience for stuff like this. You have to understand. It's not for you and me. These are for the fans that will just buy anything, right? And it's funny for me to read the exact same.
I don't think that's fair. I usually find myself agreeing with Asmongold on many things. Not always with the way he presents it, but I don't actually think that's fair. I think Last Order says it right, that a company has a right to make money and that a public company, like Square Enix, has a legal obligation to try to make money. They are responsible for shareholders' money, and they have an ethical obligation to provide stability for their employees and for the people who are playing these games. Like, I don't want to see my servers shut down because they aren't managing their resources correctly, and they do need to be able to invest in new studios and new games, and not all those games are going to be successful. And so like long-term stability is reliant on them being good at making money in the ways that the market deems fair, and this is one of those methods. And I think to say that somebody wakes up in the morning and says, we could make a literal junk mount and these people who can't control themselves will buy it no matter what, is kind of how his tone comes across And I don't think that's fair, only because, like, this is clearly a cool freaking mount. This is clearly a mount that is referencing something awesome in games. They didn't just pull crap out and be like, yeah, well, we released a banana mount. Anybody will buy anything. They'll buy a banana mount. And so they came out with something that they clearly spent time on. You know, they clearly spent resources on to make sure it looks awesome. And they're releasing it not so much as like, man, I can't wait till we screw over these people that can't afford it. I don't think there's a single person at Square Enix that wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what's awesome about my job? Is I get to screw people out of money they can't afford to spend. Like, I just don't think it's that way. Now, there could be like a negligence aspect to it where like they don't think about that person at all, and maybe they should be. Maybe they should be like, hey, let's make sure that we're trying to like warn people. Maybe our UI should tell people how much they've spent this year, so that there's some sort of warning, so that they're not accidentally being baited. You know, maybe we should have some kind of feedback mechanism that tells people, you know, you bought a lot of stuff in the past. Are you sure this is a good idea? Maybe some confirmation boxes. Maybe when we roll out campaigns, we should make sure that we're not doing so much on FOMO, things like limited time type stuff where, you know, it says don't miss out. Like, maybe we should shy away from that. Maybe there's a negligence aspect, but I don't think there's somebody who intentionally wakes up and says they'll buy anything, just release it, let's take their money, they can't afford it. And I think when we get close to that tone, you do a really unfair job of, you know, you have departments within, you have aspects of this game that only cost money. They don't bring in money. They only cost money. You know, and like community events, things like FanFest, historically in the industry do not make money for these companies. We want to run those at a loss. Okay, well, we need this other group of people that run things at a profit, where they can go spend, you know, tens of thousands of dollars developing digital in-game merchandise that can make hundreds of thousands of dollars, so that we can take that money. It's not like Yoshi P's like, yeah, so I released this crappy mount the other day. These morons bought it. Anyway, I'm getting my second island later. Like, that's not how this is being treated.
Comments on this thing here that I have to read in every single one of the WoW things, because it's the same exact thing. Yeah, listen, all I'm saying is that random people are upset because it's a raid boss mount in a shop. The shop usually has random mounts. So why are people mad about this then? So it's a raid boss mount, is that right? Why would that matter if it was a raid boss mount? Is it a mount of a raid boss, or is a mount that would drop from a raid boss that's now also being available?
No, so historically, people seem to be more okay. So to give a little bit of context, because he is new to the community, historically there's kind of two things at play here. First of all, my understanding is that this was data mined, and so people assumed it was an upcoming drop. And so they assumed that it was coming from an upcoming event or something like that, and that they would be able to get it. So they already had an expectation that when reality was different, did not feel good, right? You peeked in my closet and you saw that I had, you know, some new iPod or some crap like that you really wanted. You knew your birthday was coming up, and then you asked me, hey, have you gotten my gift? And you said, yeah, I'm really excited to give it to you. And then you assumed, based on information you should not have because you were digging through my stuff, that was your gift. And then when I found some really thoughtful gift that was not that, and you feel is worse than that, you're now suddenly mad at me that I didn't give you this thing. It was never for you. And so, like, now I'm the jerk for getting you a gift, but not the right gift. And so somehow I come out losing. And so, like, from the dev's perspective, data mining really, really sucks for them, because we see, like, they're adding Blue Mage to the game. And then, oh, Blue Mage is limited, they screwed us. They're adding Viera to the game. Oh, like, they're, you know, only female Viera, they screwed us. And not all these are data mining examples, but these ideas where we have an expectation and it meets reality, those are very frustrating. The community data mined that flying was getting added to ARR, and I came out with a video that said, this is really dangerous, guys, because now if they don't, they're going to look like jerks. And then they did add data mining, and people were like, oh, don't you feel dumb for bashing on the data miners? No, it's still a problem, because even then, Yoshi P has said over and over how the devs love the surprise and the rejoice, and instead they announced flying for ARR, and a ton of people were like, already knew that. So they don't even get that big excitement that they've worked so hard to earn. They're like, yeah, I know. And so that's part one. Part two is that this is a massive, iconic boss. And so there is something frustrating about making something that is so iconic to the game. Not a blimp made out of a chocobo as the next mount or something like that, or a lunar whale that's never existed. This is very much like saying, hey, we're going to come out with an Eden mount, and the only way to get it is money. We're going to come out with, and it's not like a redye like the Magitex or something like that. It's literally, this is an iconic boss. So historically, this game has not done that. And anytime, that's once again an expectation meeting reality. Historically, this game has not made, boss mounts available on the Mog Station and not in game. And so as a result, we assume that if they ever add a boss mount to the game, that it will be acquirable somehow related to that boss, like something like Rathalos, or, tied to some other event or something where that makes more sense, because that's what we've been conditioned to believe. And so, you guys are saying that this is already available in PvP. So, that's one more layer. But this boss is in the game, but this hasn't been a mount. So I don't know what the PvP mount is. Somebody's saying PvP, but it just starts to be really frustrating. And so maybe people thought it was going to be sub loyalty. Maybe people thought that it was going to be I don't know if it would have been more okay if it was like a recruit a friend. So it wasn't true purchase, but it was geared towards the growth. Kind of like the Fat Black Chocobo event, right? Like, let's just grow the community and then we'll reward that. So I don't know what would have been okay. And I think that starts to beg the question of where is monetization okay and where is it not? And a lot of times it comes down to, do we trust them, right? Do we trust them? And anytime that trust is eroded, we feel hurt. And anytime that trust is grown, we feel like they're owed a reward. And so that's why sometimes you can see literally identical rollouts happen between two companies, let's say Blizzard and Square Enix. And you can see those get received very, very, very differently, which is part of where Asmongold is confused, because he's used to the feedback around the WoW community, who's used to all this stuff being monetized to the nines while they're frustrated with the game, as opposed to Square Enix, which is monetized to the nines while we love the game. And those are two different feelings.
In the store, it's a mount of a raid boss. Okay, it's a mount of a raid boss, and people are pissed off because now it's on the store instead of actually being a reward. So I'll read out some of the comments here, and we'll look at what people have to say, all right? Instead of it adding unique mounts to the cash shop, why not add them as in-game achievements instead? Because they add a lot of in-game unique mounts, and cash shop item money goes back into the game, so yeah. Here's the reality, is yes, while cash shop money does go back into the game would not die if it did not have cash shop money. I think this is the same thing with WoW, or same thing with a lot.
It would not die, as in literally that would single-handedly, if they shut the Mog Station off, we would expect the servers to go offline shortly after. But they made it very clear when they added the cash shop that was what was going to pay for the EU data center. Now we have an Oceanic data center coming on. So it becomes a question of what is your definition of living? Usually the definition of dying should be restricted to, in my opinion, the servers literally being in danger of shutting offline. And so I think that's let me just stop this here. And so I think for me, that's one of those things that should be kind of restricted to that kind of conversation. But a lot of times instead that conversation pivots to, the game is worse than it was yesterday, and therefore it is on a downward trajectory. Let's call that dying. And so the moment something's damaged, that's why WoW has been accused of dying 67 million times, because every time it gets hurt, it's immediately accused of death. And so every time, I stub my toe or I get a paper cut, I'm like, oh my gosh, my health is worse than it was 5 minutes ago. I'm dying. And I think that kind of hyperbole makes this a really hard conversation to have.
A lot of these other games, it's a matter of how much money are you going to make? And the reality is whenever you're a company they're only going to invest so much money into that kind of stuff. Ultimately, among other things, is what led WoW to its decline. If you defend a practice by saying it's for the sake of the game, don't forget that you pay for the game, the expansion, and a monthly fee to play it. There's no excuse for a cash shop on top of that. They put unique mounts on the Mog Station purchase for a few years. This isn't a new thing. They put unique mounts, glams, and housing items on Mog Station for those who think it's worth it. If you don't like it, don't buy it. While refugees just chill for a second, the big difference is unlike Blizzard, they don't just pocket the money, but reinvest it into the game with server upgrades and extensions, etc. So this is kind of, this is the truth, right? Is that WoW players were okay with storm mounts. Whenever I first thought that storm mounts were a bad thing, I got a huge amount of pushback on it. I got so many fucking people that got mad at me and were pissed off at me.
Can we stop real quick and go back up and say, so the first comment was, I already pay for a sub, I already pay for expansions, there should not be anything else. So let's assume that an MMO is a restaurant and it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. And trade for $15 a month, you are allowed to eat as much of the game as you have access to, as much as you want. And these are the dishes that we have. These are the rates that we update those dishes. And here's how much of each dish you can try before you've kind of just eaten all of it, and you would have to kind of just eat more of the same thing. Giant buffet. And to get access to this $15 per entry, you need to have a permit to be allowed to kind of park in the parking lot. This buffet is tied to like a country club type thing. And so every 2 years, we're expected to buy a copy of the expansion. And so it already kind of feels like you're monetizing something on top of monetizing something, right? Where I'm kind of paying for this entry fee into the city so that I can pay for a once a month access to this buffet. But this restaurant says, we want to do something really special. We want to do something truly special. We want to have like a special evening. You can come in for Valentine's Day or Thanksgiving or some holiday, and you can come in and you can eat on our patio. And it's not going to be our normal buffet food. It's going to be this one-time event, and it's celebrating this thing or whatever. And it's going to be held on our roof terrace. Now, down below, the buffet is going to be running full steam ahead. You can continue to eat at the buffet. But if you want to be allowed on the roof terrace, you're going to have to pay a one-time fee of $30. It's only good for that one event. You don't have to go. There's this idea of, I've already paid for the city. I've already paid for the buffet. I should get that thing for free. Well, that thing was never promised to you at the beginning, ever. You did not pay for unlimited access to everything they make. You paid for everything included in the subscription. And if they choose to do something outside of that, whether that money be to put out a data center that you don't play on, to go put out another game like Octopath Traveler out of a brand new studio that you decide not to buy or ever play, you don't get to go and say, I paid $15 for access to the game. I should get to touch everything that $15 touches. So if to maintain the buffet as you play it costs them $13, and they take that $2 and they go spend it off on something else, you don't get to go do that. You don't get to go play Avengers for free because you're subscribed to Final Fantasy XIV. You don't get to play Octopath or own all the Tomb Raiders or play other Final Fantasies. It doesn't matter if some of the Final Fantasy XIV money drips out and goes and supports those games, because new IP costs money. Final Fantasy XVI could be partially funded by money coming out of Final Fantasy XIV coffers. And when it comes out as a Final Fantasy XIV player, you'll be entitled to literally $0 of Final Fantasy XVI. It will not entitle you to a discount. It will not entitle you to a free trial that non-14 players don't get access to. It will not entitle you to anything because you paid $15 for access to 14. You paid your money. You got your access. Transaction complete. And I know that sucks because you get to the buffet and you're excited. I finally paid for my permit. We got here. We arrived. It's all downloaded. It's installed. I've caught up on all the previous expansions. I'm paying for my $15 for the first month of Endwalker. And then you hear there's an event going on upstairs. And you hear that there's a big shiny mount for $30 extra. And you look around and everything in your buffet suddenly might taste a little less sweet. I understand that because psychologically, it doesn't feel good to see somebody get something you didn't get when you feel you finally arrived. You feel you finally earned the complete picture, only to learn there's still yet one more thing. I understand that frustration. I do. But you have to back up and say, but what did you pay for? I paid for access to Final Fantasy XIV servers to be stable and to have ongoing development. What did I get? I got access to Final Fantasy XIV servers, stable with ongoing development. I got exactly what I paid for. I didn't pay for every mount they could ever dream up. I paid for what goes in the game. And if they choose to release additional services for the game, that is entirely a separate transaction.
For what I was saying about store mounts, they're like, oh, who cares? It's just a mount. Why does it matter to you? You're just a loser who can't afford it. And this was like back in 2009, 2010, 2011, right? Whenever the first mounts came out. Because at that time, the game was still in a good place. That time, the game was still decent. And I think that really whenever people got pissed off about store mounts, it's whenever the game started to suck. Because you can get fucked in the ass, but at least use lube. And that's what it was. And the game used to be really good. The game was awesome. And because it was so good, because the game was so enjoyable, people were able to look past all of that garbage. They didn't really care about, oh, well, you know, like it's another store mount. Yeah, that's fine, but we're getting a bunch of other content in the game. The game's fun to play. I'm playing the game all day with my friends. It's whatever. So this is the way that the Final Fantasy community feels about it now. And I think that the more time that, like, if there's ever a point in Final Fantasy where the content stops coming out as quickly as maybe these people would want it to, that's whenever you're really going to start seeing that frustration come out, in my opinion, right? You accuse Blizzard of managed decline, though. I mean, accuse is kind of a hard word, but yeah, I would say so. I think that, you know, if you look at the definition of managed decline, and you look at the way that WoW's been handled, I would say that, yeah, it seems like it's in a managed decline.
Managed decline? First of all, I don't think that they're intentionally... Managed decline implies that that's an intention, and I don't think that they're trying to make World of Warcraft not... Final Fantasy XI is in a managed decline. They're not actively putting out huge, brand new expansions with large, forward-thinking remasters to get us into the future based on anything that's been confirmed. And so... I would say they might unintentionally be managing a decline, but I don't think that's their goal. I think if we're basing it on intention, not based on actions, and I think when we're judging a dev team, we should base it on intentions, not based on actions, because simply working hard and simply caring for your community does not guarantee a good game. And so to imply that the game must be successful for them to have cared about their job or given a crap gets really dangerously close to encouraging behavior such as basing bonus structures on Metacritic scores. And I think that's a really dangerous place to put things, because then people are chasing a Metacritic score instead of chasing the reason they became a dev in the first place, which is why we trust them to do that job professionally. And so I don't think it's in a state of managed decline, but I do think he's hitting on an interesting point here, that the fact that it feels like that, the fact that it feels like a game is not doing well, has a lot more to do with how we receive monetization than actual problems. Diablo Immortal is the prime example of this. Diablo Immortal, to fans that simply wanted to have confirmation that Diablo 4 was coming out, which at the time had not been announced, and was announced at a core fan event, BlizzCon, instead of something like a Gamescom or E3 or something like that, it felt like they were coming to fans who actively just wanted to know that their franchise was being updated at a core fan level, and were told instead it was being monetized. And that felt very frustrating. And it has been a meme across the gaming industry, from even people who don't play action RPGs, from people who don't play Blizzard games. Diablo Immortal. Now, there's a lot about that event that I've covered in the past, why I think that was in particular received poorly, but what I will say is Final Fantasy fans will talk about that. They will talk about all the different store mounts for Blizzard, or even as recently as this weekend, I was, hanging out with some people, and it was mentioned offhand that they thought BlizzCon was a giant promotional and advertising event that was just there to get money. Meanwhile, in all of these contexts, I'm talking to people who play Final Fantasy happily and don't say anything about the fact that there are multiple Square Enix apps on your phone that are happy to be gacha games right from the get-go. If you've never played Record Keeper, you are not, like, it actively is chasing your money all of the time. All of the time. It is actively chasing your money. And FanFest is a historically 3-part event that is the kickoff event hyping an expansion, an upcoming product. Call it what it is. The difference is that we actively want that product. We want it to succeed. We feel they deserve our money, and our biggest frustrations with this game are often centered around, why won't they take my money? Why is it so hard to buy a copy of the game? Why is it so hard to log in to the server so I can get access to this game that I want to support, that I want to play, that I want to talk about? That there are toxic parts of the community around, I want to be mad at anybody who says anything bad about this game or plays the game in a way that I feel dishonors this thing that I care so much about. Because we are passionately and toxically positive about this game, of course there should be money supporting it. They should make way more money than they do now. Meanwhile, when we feel differently, when we feel passionately and toxically negative towards a game, why does anybody play this game? I can't believe people play this game. I wish I'd never played this game and more people should quit this game. Then when that game asks for money, that is a very, very, very different feeling. But it could be the exact same item. On the same day, both games, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, could release a $30 boss mount to their stores at the exact same day or the exact same point in their release cycle, and they would be received very differently. And that's because the community feels very different. The action is the same, but we need to be very well aware of what our own bias and our own feelings are making that action be received as.
Yeah, that I would pretty much say that, absolutely. Fuck off with your cash shop, Blizzard. You make all the cool mounts paid mounts on purpose. We already paid for the mount in our sub. Wow, only $30, Mom? Can I please buy your credit card? Listen, here's the truth. And yeah, this has 470 comments. It's like it's a Destiny thread or something. Well, look at this. So, I think that it's easier to tolerate cash shops whenever the game's not a steamy pile of shit. That's true. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying too. True and real. I'd say also take store mounts and cosmetics all day over a WoW token. I think that's very true and also real. Yeah, I mean, store mounts suck. They suck in every game. Nobody wants them. I think that it's just a unfortunate.
I don't think on its own people are thrilled about store mounts, but I do think there are people that are like, I want this mount. I understand why it's not in the existing development budget, and I would be willing to pay more to get it. And so I think there are people who tolerate store mounts. I don't think there are people who are like, you know what? They were going to put this mount in game for free, but I called them up and was like, hey, what if you charged me money for it? Like, I don't think there's anybody who would prefer to spend money as opposed to getting it for free, but I do think there are people that absolutely are okay with it. The question is trust. The question is, what do I think they're going to do with that money, right? If I think it's going to go directly into Bobby's pocket, that doesn't feel the same as it's going to go directly into funding an oceanic data center. And so the question comes, where do I think they're spending money I've already given them in the past? Because that's where that trust comes from. When I paid them $15 a month, every month or close to every month for however many years you've been playing, and I paid for copies of the game, maybe collector's editions or digital upgrade things, maybe I paid for past access to, I've gone to FanFest or I've bought in-store mounts or things like that before, where do I feel, and it is a feeling, where do I feel that money is gone? And it has to be a feeling because they're never going to tell us. It's not like you can go to where'smyfinalfantasybucks.com and just track exactly where your pennies went. And so do I feel it went to treating the devs fairly? Do I feel that they're managing their community support team and the way they interact with me fairly? Do I think that they're managing the content itself fairly? Do I think they're managing the rest of their company in a way that represents good, healthy stability? Do I think they're taking care of the leadership, such as Yoshi P, and vice versa? The leadership is taking care of us. Do I think all of these things? And it's a feeling. And so the moment that feeling is gone, why would I want to give you more money? If I've already given you $15, $30, $100, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 over my time playing this game, depending on the player, and I think you've mismanaged it, why would I give you another penny? And so it's a feeling. And so when I think that's the difference, is it does feel like I don't know that if I put another dollar into World of Warcraft, if it's going to make it into World of Warcraft. But it does feel like if I buy this $30 mount, which we've given away one today, is that $30 will, at least in part, support causes that I do think are good causes in and around this game.
Reality of gaming, but I think that one thing that takes the sting off is if the game is actually fun to play, which is why people are so mad about the ones in WoW. So that's what it comes down to. But yeah, they suck in Final Fantasy too. Can you spot the difference? Damn, Pyromancer fucking... Yo, he cleaned his shit up. God damn. Now, here's one thing I've got to say. I'm not doing this. I'm not changing up all my stuff. I've had so many great memories. I have had so many good times in World of Warcraft. And there is not a chance that I'm going to let anybody take that away from me. I love World of Warcraft. I'm excited to play it again. I want to go back and do Chains of Domination. I think it'll be very enjoyable for me. However, there are other things that I want to do right now that I'm just focusing on instead. I don't want to feel like I have to do anything. I think that the biggest focus and the biggest thing with WoW, and this is something that I felt many times, is that the game forces people to do things. It makes people think, I have to do X. I have to do Y. I need to do this. I need to do that. And because of that, I think that it creates this really toxic relationship that like the player has with the game. And in the process of creating that toxic relationship, it does it, let me see, 9.1 is worse than garbage. I don't know about that. Yeah, it's like FOMO. Basically, like, WoW has so much FOMO that's in the game now. But yeah, either way, all I'm really trying to say here is that I have no intention of getting rid of all of my WoW stuff. I look forward to playing WoW again. I love WoW. I will always love WoW. And even if WoW turns to shit, they cannot take the good memories and good experiences that I have away from me, no matter how hard they fucking try.
It does feel gross when you think of a past memory and you view it in a new light. When you find out that a local business you supported was doing something awful, and you think, oh my gosh, for all the positive memories I have, I was giving them time, attention, and resources that they were able to use to perpetuate something that I don't stand for. And that does not feel good. So to think back on all the fond memories I've had in Blizzard games, and to think that that money was helping fuel some of the behavior that was going on by some of the individuals that worked there sucks. It sucks. But it also went to pay for people that I've met that I'm really glad had their careers funded by that. And it also created relationships that I'm still in to this day, that I'm very close with. I'm taking a Friday off upcoming so that I can drive across the country with a friend who needs somebody to drive with, who a huge portion of our relationship, I met him in college and I introduced him to World of Warcraft, and we went from being passing acquaintances to being co-raid leads, and he is one of my closest friends. Blizzard doesn't get to take that away. So as I look back on my new set here, and this lovely new white wall, and I've looked at decorating it, it has been a struggle of, do you decorate it supporting Blizzard? You know, on the conversation of merchandising and support, and, you know, on the conversation of monetization and attention, what do I put back here? And does Blizzard get to be a part of that? And if you think about what's shaped who I am as a gamer, you have to include franchises like Zelda and Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft as probably the three, in some order, most iconic franchises for me as a gamer. There's been a ton of other games I spent thousands of hours on. You know, games like Halo and Mario and Pokemon. There's a ton of them. But Final Fantasy, Zelda, and World of Warcraft are the three games that have shaped most of what I look for in any future game I pick up. And so if this is to represent me, so that when somebody comes into a stream or a video and sees this, what should be there? And so with Pyromancer, like, I can understand both sides of it. I can understand Asmongold versus Pyromancer as the spectrum here. On one hand, when people come in and go, who are you? What do you stand for? You want to represent your past, what Asmongold's saying, because this is fond memories. This is my resume. This is my dozens of years playing games, and they matter to me. But on the other hand, you want to say, this is who I am now. You're here now. This is who I am now. And I don't need to be associated with something in the past. And the difference comes when those aren't both aligned. At Blizzard, turned out, all this report came out, and it turned out that, oh my gosh, what's crazy about Blizzard is that they've been so wonderful behind the scenes. Then Pyromancer would probably have a split between, hey, I'm playing Final Fantasy now, and I still love World of Warcraft. But that's not the case. And so that is a question, and it's a question that's an individual journey for each and every person. And I don't know that it has to be like Asmon versus Pyro. I think it's, okay, the spectrum is obviously Pyromancer's gone all the way to one side in this image, and Asmon is describing all the way on the other. And I think somewhere in between, you know, you might fall all the way up against one of them, you might fall all the way up against the other, or you might split the difference and say, you know what, I have a World of Warcraft figure on my desk and I love it, but I'm not going to buy anything else from them. That's fine.
So just keep that in mind.
Well, thank you, Asmongold. That was a great first video back, and it's good to kind of catch up on this news. And I think there is frustration around what should Mog Station mounts be. You know, we got a polar bear mount. Like, how many mounts in game versus out of game should they be? Do we need transparency from them on where the Mog Station mounts go? Should Mog Station mounts be reskinned? Should they never be reskinned? Should there ever be reskins in games, period? It opens up an entire conversation around how mounts should be managed, but I think it furthermore drills down to a foundation level of how should these games be monetized? And new games have the opportunity of reflecting how the market works today. But a game that has been around as long as Final Fantasy XIV, unfortunately, is having to balance treating people the way they've always been treated, that like the way they're being treated, and welcoming in the new and standard way of dealing with monetization. You don't want to see it flip back and forth. That's what something like Destiny does, and it leads to a lot of frustration. But you also don't want to see them get old and stale and fall off the market. So it's a tough conversation, and I think, you know, it's an interesting one to kind of look at and try to look for context in, and mostly just be thankful that, like, at least I feel that I'm thankful that I'm not the person that is ultimately responsible with the final decision on how to handle monetization for Final Fantasy XIV. Because your goal is, of course, to support and fund a game that you want to make people happy and have a good time. But you're also trying to make sure that you extract a fair amount of money out of the market to fund that. And you don't want it to hurt people. And so you want to simply offer something awesome, and if they want to support it, that's great. You want to offer something that people who have the luxury of being able to support a game more can take part in. But you shouldn't have to do that at the cost of now making, you know, people who can't afford it, or people who are trying to balance their finances a different way, or just play the game at a certain financial point, feel like they're not getting to play the full game. Kinda.